Bloodline drama. Jacob Fatu joins Seth Rollins' faction backstage after betraying Solo Sikoa. Seth Rollins Raw. Hey guys, once again, chaos is about to erupt on Monday Night Raw. WWE is planning to bring in some big-name superstars to join Seth Rollins' faction, and things are about to get wild. But here's the big question, who are these superstars? Will they come from SmackDown, or are they Raw exclusive talent? Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're breaking down everything you need to know about Seth Rollins' faction and which new names WWE is looking to add. So without wasting any time, let's get straight into it. A while back, WWE made it clear they weren't planning to expand Seth Rollins' group. They had no interest in adding new members, that was the official word. But now? That's changed. According to the latest updates, WWE is actively looking to bring in more superstars. Reports suggest this won't be a solo addition, we're talking 2 or more new members joining forces with Seth. Why? Because War Games are coming, and WWE wants Rollins backed by a solid team. So who's on the short list? 2 NXT stars are being heavily discussed, Ethan Page and Ricky Sentz. That's right, both are from NXT, and chances are, they'll be making their move to the main roster as part of Seth Rollins' new faction. If you follow NXT, you might already know them. If not, remember the names, because they could be stepping into the spotlight soon. Now here's where it gets smart on WWE's part. Bringing NXT talent into a faction led by Seth Rollins? That's a power move. It boosts their exposure big time, and sets them up as future main eventers. If Rollins ever steps away or retires, WWE wants someone ready to take the torch. And this faction could be their launching pad. But to be clear, nothing is confirmed yet. Ethan Page and Ricky Sentz are strong possibilities, but things could still change. We might see someone else step in, maybe before Survivor Series, maybe in the next episode of Raw. So here's a question for you, if you were TripleH, which 2 superstars would you add to Seth Rollins' faction? Drop your picks in the comments below. That's the current update on Seth Rollins and his growing faction. Expect to see 2 new faces joining the group soon. And with that, we're wrapping up today's video. If you enjoyed the content, hit that like button, and subscribe to the channel. You don't betray the bloodline and walk away untouched. That's the unspoken rule. That's the code written in blood, sweat, and broken bones across the WWE landscape ever since Roman Reigns crowned himself the tribal chief. The Bloodline isn't just a faction, it's a dynasty, a ruthless, no-mercy family unit that's dominated the business for over 3 years. From pay-per-view main events to backstage politics, they've ruled it all. Until now. Because someone just shattered that legacy. Someone stepped out of line, not to challenge from the outside, but from deep within the family tree itself. His name? Jacob Fatu. And what he just did might change the future of Raw, SmackDown, and everything in between. This isn't just wrestling news. This is a civil war. 4 months, we've watched Solo Sikoa evolve. Once the silent enforcer, the one who followed orders without question, he started carrying himself differently once Roman Reigns stepped away. When Jimmy Uso fell. When Jay jumped ship. When Paul Heyman's eyes stopped gleaming with certainty. Solo began walking like a man with a throne in mind. His alliances grew murky. His loyalty? Unclear. But what no one expected was that his own blood, someone cut from the same lineage, would turn heel on him. This past week on Raw, the unthinkable happened. Jacob Fatu, the Samoan werewolf, debuted in stunning fashion. Not as an ally. Not as backup. But as a traitor, launching a full-on ambush on Solo Sikoa in the backstage area, while Seth Rollins stood nearby, grinning like the devil who wrote the playbook. The cameras caught just enough, Jacob slamming Solo into crates, yelling something about new blood and no more lies. Rollins watched, didn't flinch. Security didn't rush in. Commentators didn't know what to say. But the message was clear, Jacob Fatu is not here to serve the bloodline. He's here to bury it. So, what's going on? You're probably wondering the same things we are. Why would Jacob Fatu, the feared powerhouse from the legendary Anoa'i family, the man who wreaked havoc in MLW and carried the legacy of the Samoan dynasty on his back, side with Seth freaking Rollins? Why betray Solo? And what does this mean for the future of Monday Night Raw, especially with War Games looming on the horizon? To understand the chaos that's brewing, we have to rewind. We have to dig into Rollins' recent moves, the internal rumblings from WWE Creative, and the quiet but crucial shifts happening across both brands. Because make no mistake, this isn't just about one debut or one attack. This is about power. This is about a new faction being born, with one purpose: to replace the Bloodline as WWE's dominant force. Let's be honest, Seth Rollins hasn't been flying solo. Not really. He's been the heartbeat of Monday Night Raw for over a year, consistently putting on show-stealing matches and carrying the World Heavyweight Championship with the kind of swagger that defines a generational talent. But he's been without a crew. No backup. No stable. No reinforcements when the odds get stacked. At least, that's what we thought. Turns out, Rollins has been watching. Waiting. Plotting. And Jacob Fatu might just be the first piece of that puzzle. Not the only one, but the foundation. The muscle. The shock and awe moment to announce, this is no longer Roman's era. The timing isn't random. Sources inside WWE have hinted for weeks that a faction was being built around Rollins in secret. Initially, this was dismissed. Rollins has been vocal about not needing a team. WWE even pushed that narrative. But then the reports changed. Quiet talks about recruiting multiple big names, including some from NXT, started circulating. And just like that, the gears started turning. Now? It's official. The game plan has shifted. Seth Rollins isn't fighting alone. He's building an army. And Jacob Fatu is the first shot fired. But why Fatu? Why now? Jacob Fatu is no ordinary signing. WWE's been eyeing him for years, but issues around contracts and commitments to MLW made things tricky. In the meantime, he built a monstrous reputation. Suplex machines, no-sell chaos, explosive promos, he became one of the most feared wrestlers outside of WWE. Now he's here. And he didn't come in through NXT. He didn't debut on SmackDown alongside Roman. He didn't wear a Bloodline shirt or nod at Heyman. He came straight to Raw. Straight to Seth Rollins. That's not just a statement, that's a declaration of war. He's done waiting. He's not here to be a cousin in the background. He's here to carve his own path. This isn't just about brands anymore. This isn't Raw versus SmackDown. This isn't heel versus face. This is legacy versus rebellion. This is a narrative that could shape WWE's next 5 years. Here's why: the Bloodline is in shambles. Roman's gone. Jimmy's broken. Jay's out. Solo is floundering. Rollins is red hot. He needs a faction to sustain that momentum heading into War Games and beyond. WWE is transitioning. NXT stars are being called up. The old guard is fading. The fans are hungry for chaos. They don't want scripted dominance. They want drama. And drama's what they're getting. With Jacob Fatu's debut, and Solo Sikoa's humiliation, we've officially entered a new era of storytelling. This is the Bloodline Civil War. And Rollins? He's not just watching it unfold. He's the one lighting the fuse. What you'll learn in this video over the next few chapters, we're diving deep into the madness. Here's what's coming. Why WWE changed its mind about Rollins' faction, and who else might be joining. Everything you need to know about Jacob Fatu, from his real-life family ties to his wrestling style and past feuds. what Solo Sikoa's betrayal really means, and how this cracks the foundation of the Bloodline. Exclusive backstage insights and speculative booking leading up to War Games. The NXT wildcards who could be next, Ethan Page and Ricky Sentz. How this whole storyline might shape WrestleMania season and beyond. And here's the best part, you don't have to be a wrestling historian to follow along. Whether you're a die-hard fan or just someone who loves a great story, this is the kind of plotline that grabs you by the throat and doesn't let go. So buckle up. We're not just breaking down a feud. We're breaking down a revolution. Seth Rollins has never been predictable. He's reinvented himself more times than anyone else in the modern era of WWE, and each time, he's done it with purpose. Whether he was the architect of the Shield, the self-proclaimed Messiah, or the outlandish visionary draped in vibrant suits, one thing has always been constant: Rollins plays the long game. But what's happening now with his sudden alignment with Jacob Fatu is something altogether different. It's not just another character evolution. It's the signal of a larger, more calculated change, both for Rollins and for WWE as a whole. And make no mistake, this wasn't the plan all along. For months, the word coming out of WWE headquarters was clear: Seth Rollins would be running solo. He would be the face of Raw, the fighting champion, the man to anchor Monday nights without needing a faction to hold him up. The company leaned into it. Rollins became the anti-Roman. Where Reigns relied on the Bloodline to help him maintain power, Rollins won matches on his own. No interference. No backup. Just pure, in-ring skill and stamina. And it worked. Ratings surged. Merchandise flew off shelves. Fans were singing his theme music in arenas across the globe. Rollins was doing what few could, staying white-hot without needing the crutch of a storyline entourage. But that was before things started to shift behind the curtain. It started subtly. A few production notes leaked. A backstage segment here, a missed opportunity there. But then the hints got louder. TripleH, now more firmly in control of WWE's creative direction, began signaling that big changes were coming. New alliances. New stables. And eventually, the word got out: Rollins wasn't going to stay solo much longer. The company saw the writing on the wall. With War Games approaching, a match format that thrives on group warfare, WWE realized that Rollins needed a squad. Not just for storyline heat, but to build a platform that could launch newer stars and shake up the status quo. And that's where the change began. The internal memo that sparked the shift reportedly landed on the desks of WWE's creative team 3 weeks ago. It laid out a new long-term arc for Rollins, one that involved building a faction from the ground up, carefully selected, deliberately positioned, and designed to stand as the ideological opposite of the Bloodline. Rollins would not just be leading a team. He'd be building a legacy. The timing wasn't coincidental. With Roman Reigns still on a part-time schedule and the Bloodline disintegrating without his full-time presence, the company needed a new powerhouse to carry the narrative weight. The Judgment Day had their moment. Imperium is still cold and calculating, but not fully over with the casual fans. The LWO remains mid-card. WWE needed a top-tier unit that felt unpredictable, dangerous, and emotionally charged. Rollins' new faction would be that answer. But before this decision was made, the pitch to Rollins was far from a sure thing. Rollins has always been vocal about not wanting to play the same hand twice. His last major faction stint, during his Messiah run, fell flat in its final months. Creative stagnation, lack of chemistry with underdeveloped teammates, and abrupt cuts during the pandemic era doomed it before it could evolve. This time had to be different. Rollins reportedly agreed, but only under specific terms. First, the group had to feel organic. He didn't want a pre-assembled stable thrown together last minute. Each member had to bring something unique. Second, he wanted the team to be about the future. No aging legends making a cameo. No nostalgia acts. He wanted hungry stars who could carry WWE into the next decade. And finally, he wanted the angle to feel dangerous. Not cartoonish. Not comedic. Real stakes. Real betrayal. Real chaos. Enter Jacob Fatu. Fatu's arrival was the first domino. A shocking choice, but a calculated one. Rollins knew that bringing in someone with blood ties to the bloodline would ignite immediate tension. Fans would pay attention. Social media would explode. WWE would have a built-in emotional powder keg without needing to fabricate a rivalry from scratch. And here's where things get even more strategic. Fatu's addition wasn't the end of the conversation. It was just the beginning. Rollins and WWE are reportedly looking to build a four-man unit, himself, Fatu, and two rising stars from NXT. The current names being discussed are Ethan Page and Ricky Sens, two standouts with vastly different in-ring styles but a shared trait: they're fresh. Untapped. Hungry. WWE's shift in plans wasn't just about War Games. It was about seeding the next phase of their long-term storytelling. The Roman Reigns era is waning. Cody Rhodes is walking the path of legacy redemption. LA Knight is on the rise, and Gunther is waiting in the wings as a future world title holder. In the midst of all this, Rollins' faction is intended to anchor Monday Night Raw with the kind of depth that used to define the Shield. The internal pitch being circulated describes the group as a hybrid of evolution and chaos. Imagine the technical brilliance of Evolution, the rebellious anarchy of early Shield, and the loyalty-breaking venom of the original NWO, all rolled into one. What makes this particularly interesting is that WWE isn't relying on predictable recruiting patterns. They're not pulling from the main roster exclusively. Instead, they're tapping into developmental, the indie circuit, and legacy bloodlines to construct something that feels fresh but still rooted in the WWE universe. Rollins, for his part, has fully bought in. His promos have taken on a sharper edge. His body language is less performative, more measured. There's calculation in every word now, as if he knows exactly how much longer he plans to stay in the spotlight before handing the reins to the next wave. He's not just building a faction. He's building a succession plan. The company sees it, too. Rollins is 38. He's not slowing down, but he's starting to pick his spots. WWE wants the next faction to double as a mentorship platform. The idea is to use Rollins' star power to create new stars who can eventually break off, turn on him, and become main eventers themselves. In many ways, this mirrors what TripleH once did with Evolution. He was the centerpiece, but it was Randy Orton and Batista who ultimately benefited the most. That's the blueprint now. Let Rollins guide the ship, but make sure everyone aboard is a future captain. This is also why WWE's changing direction now, not 6 months from now. The company wants to use the remaining months before Survivor Series and WrestleMania season to build credibility. You can't rush chemistry. You can't fake cohesion. This new faction needs time to breathe, to feud, to dominate, and eventually to implode. All the classic beats of a wrestling faction storyline. But modernized, updated, and loaded with cross-brand implications. This wasn't always the plan. But it's the plan now. And based on the reaction to Jacob Fatu's shocking debut, it's already paying off. Backstage morale is reportedly high. Other superstars see this as an opportunity to elevate their own game. Fans are already fantasy booking War Games scenarios. Merchandise talks are happening. Custom theme music is in development. This isn't a trial balloon. It's a real shift in direction. And perhaps most important of all, it finally gives Rollins the kind of supporting cast his career deserves at this point. For too long, Rollins has had to carry the weight solo. He's done it well, but even the most versatile stars eventually need a faction to feed off. Roman had the Usos. TripleH had Evolution. Shawn Michaels had DX. Rollins, until now, had no one. Now he has Jacob Fatu. And if the next two names are chosen wisely, this faction could very well dominate the next 3 years of WWE programming. That's the bet WWE is placing. That's the pivot they've made. And based on everything we've seen so far, it's the smartest move they've made in a very long time. There are few match types in WWE history that generate as much anticipation, fear, and chaos as War Games. It's not just a gimmick match. It's not just a spectacle. War Games is a battlefield. 2 rings, 1 massive steel cage, and a format designed for maximum violence, betrayal, and storytelling. And this year, it's not just a battleground. It's the reason why everything is changing. The sudden formation of Seth Rollins' new faction isn't happening in a vacuum. It's happening on a tight timeline, with War Games fast approaching. And for WWE, the pressure is on to make the match feel meaningful. They can't just throw bodies in the cage and hope for sparks. They need a story. A personal grudge. A family fracture. A reason for fans to care when fists start flying. This is why the Jacob Fatu betrayal was timed perfectly. It wasn't just a shocking debut, it was strategic storytelling designed to anchor the War Games card with emotion and depth. Let's take a step back and look at what War Games is, and why it matters so much right now. Originally created in the late 1980s in WCW, War Games was meant to showcase faction warfare. It was brutal, claustrophobic, and completely different from the traditional one-on-one matches fans were used to. Over time, it became a signature of group rivalries, an ultimate proving ground for dominance and betrayal. When WWE revived War Games under the NXT banner, it became the centerpiece of takeover events. And in those matches, something became clear: War Games works best when the teams have real history. Real pain. Real consequences. Now that the format has moved to the main roster, the stakes have only increased. With Roman Reigns absent and the Bloodline slowly imploding, WWE needed a new foundation for this year's War Games, and that's where Seth Rollins comes in. Rollins, unlike Roman, doesn't rule through intimidation. He doesn't rely on cousins or family hierarchy. He relies on strategy. On timing. On selecting the right moment to make the right move. And right now, with War Games looming, Rollins is constructing his own version of the Shield. Not in name, but in purpose. That purpose? Survival through unity. Domination through chemistry. The inclusion of Jacob Fatu wasn't just a shot at Solo Sikoa, it was a declaration that Rollins is building something that can survive the brutality of War Games. And make no mistake, Rollins knows what this match demands. This is a man who's gone through Hell in a Cell, Elimination Chambers, and Iron Man matches. But War Games is different. It isn't about one-on-one brilliance. It's about team warfare. It's about trust, execution, and sustained brutality. And it's about having soldiers you can count on. That's why WWE changed its tune. That's why the narrative pivoted. Rollins was never going to walk into War Games alone. The crowd would have cheered his bravery, but storytelling would have suffered. There would be no stakes without backup, no urgency without betrayal. But with Fatu? The script is alive. Here's the likely structure WWE is working toward: a 4-on-4, or 5-on-5, War Games match between Rollins' new faction and a rival team that could include Solo Sikoa, some form of remaining Bloodline representation, or another coalition of wrestlers aligned against Rollins' growing influence. But more than that, this match is about symbolism. Rollins and Fatu represent the future. Fatu breaking away from family represents the collapse of the Bloodline. War Games becomes the arena not just for violence, but for the audience to witness the symbolic death of Roman Reigns' empire. That's what WWE is aiming for. That's the kind of storytelling that hooks casual viewers and hardcore fans alike. And it's what War Games has always been meant for. Let's talk match logistics. Traditionally, War Games begins with one member from each team. After 5 minutes, a member from one team enters, giving that side the advantage. Every few minutes, another wrestler joins, alternating between teams. Once all participants are in the cage, the match officially begins, only then can it end by pinfall or submission. That means strategy is everything. Who enters first? Who anchors the team? Who's the closer? Rollins, being the tactician he is, will likely place himself in the later spots. He'll want to let Fatu wreak havoc early. Fatu, a brawler with speed and unpredictability, is perfect for that opening slot. He can do damage, create panic, and establish dominance. Assuming Ethan Page and Ricky Sense join the faction by then, their placement becomes just as important. Page brings charisma and brute strength, he's a third-slot wrestler, ideal for rallying momentum. Sense, who is newer to audiences, may be used in the 4th or 5th slot, providing a chance for a breakout performance. And then there's the unknown. WWE may still throw in a surprise. A veteran. A wild card. Maybe someone returning from injury. This is War Games. Surprises are part of the formula. On the opposing side, we can expect Solo Sikoa to lead a revenge squad. He'll be furious. Humiliated. Ready to go to war. But who stands with him? Is Jimmy Uso still in play? Does he have his own redemption arc? Could Heyman orchestrate a surprise allegiance with someone like Gunther or a returning Brock Lesnar? Or, more shockingly, could Roman Reigns himself step back into the fold? Not as a savior, but as the final nail in the Bloodline coffin? That's the kind of question WWE is letting hang in the air. They're feeding fan speculation because they know what's coming. They know War Games sells itself, but only if the characters involved are emotionally volatile. Rollins vs. Sikoa is compelling. Add Fatu, and it becomes war. That's what this section of the story is about. Not just preparing for a match, but laying the emotional groundwork for devastation. Rollins has to be more than a champion. He has to become a general. Fatu has to be more than a cousin who turned. He has to be the statement piece. And War Games has to feel like the match that will determine not just supremacy, but legacy. The format of the match also benefits the kind of storytelling WWE has been leaning toward in the TripleH era, longer form, slow-burn angles with emotionally grounded beats. The cage limits outside interference. It forces decisions. It strips away excuses. It's a test. And that's what WWE is aiming for with this shift in Rollins' character arc. He's not just the flashy champion anymore. He's the man testing loyalty, testing ambition, and forcing others to choose a side. Are you with the old world? Or are you ready for what's next? War Games is the proving ground. It's where answers will be demanded, not given. It's where family gets replaced by ideology. In a few short weeks, WWE took what looked like a stagnant storyline and lit a fire underneath it. The War Games factor is the reason. Without it, Rollins might still be flying solo, and Fatu might still be in developmental limbo. But War Games created urgency. It forced decisions. And now, we're looking at the most high-stakes version of the match in years, because this time, it's not about bragging rights. It's about who leads WWE into its next era. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Not behind the curtain. Not backstage. Not without warning, or build-up, or some kind of hint. For all the drama that WWE delivers week after week, fans still expect some kind of signal before the big betrayals. A suspicious look. A mistimed tag. A slight hesitation. Wrestling's betrayal blueprint is well established. But Jacob Fatu didn't follow the blueprint. He tore it up, set it on fire, and used the smoke to signal the biggest shock of 2025. 1 minute, Solo Sikoa was walking through the backstage corridor, focused and calm. The next, he was being smashed into crates, blindsided, suplexed, and left broken on the floor. And standing over him? A man with his blood, his history, his family name, but none of his loyalty. Jacob Fatu had arrived in WWE. And within 30 seconds of his first appearance, he made his allegiance brutally clear. This wasn't an introduction. It was a statement. The betrayal wasn't just physical. It was symbolic. It was everything WWE fans never thought they'd see, a blood relative of Roman Reigns turning his back on the bloodline the second he stepped through the door. No handshake. No unity. Just violence. But this wasn't some random heel turn. This was the product of months, possibly years, of frustration, planning, and rejection. Let's break it down. Jacob Fatu is not new to wrestling. Long before his WWE debut, he was already making headlines across the indie scene, especially in MLW, where he dominated as a champion and built a reputation for being one of the most feared athletes outside the WWE bubble. His look, his intensity, his explosive in-ring style, all of it screamed main event potential. And yet, he was on the outside looking in. That's what makes this betrayal hit so hard. Because it wasn't just Solo Sikoa who got betrayed. It was the entire narrative of the bloodline as WWE fans knew it. Jacob Fatu didn't come in wearing the red flower lei or throwing up the ones. He didn't embrace the ceremonial legacy that Roman Reigns built. He didn't fall in line. He walked in, fists first. And Solo Sikoa paid the price. Sources backstage described the moment as chaotic but meticulously planned. The attack was filmed in one unbroken take. There were no camera cuts, no music cues, no fanfare. Just the sounds of fists hitting flesh and metal echoing through the hallway. The segment reportedly caught even some of the talent off guard. It was kept under wraps until the final hour before the show aired. The decision to debut Jacob this way was made by WWE's top creative brass in response to one thing: the need for unpredictability. The current product, while strong, had begun leaning too heavily on safe storytelling. Fans knew when to expect returns. They could predict the next heel turn. The internet leaks had taken some of the magic away. So WWE took a risk. They bet on silence. They gave Jacob no vignette. No hype video. No spoiler tweets from backstage personnel. Just shock. And it worked. In the hours after the attack aired, social media exploded. Jacob Fatu trended globally. Clips racked up millions of views within minutes. The comment sections were flooded with variations of the same phrase: "Did that really just happen?" The answer was yes. Jacob Fatu had not only turned on the bloodline, he had turned the wrestling world upside down. What makes this betrayal even more compelling is the history behind it. Fatu, like Solo and the Usos, is part of the legendary Anoa'i family tree. His father, the Tonga Kid, wrestled alongside legends. His uncles? WWE Hall of Famers. His bloodline? Royalty. But unlike Roman, Solo, and the Usos, Jacob didn't rise through the WWE system. He wasn't part of NXT. He didn't get the primetime spotlights early in his career. He built his name from the outside. And for years, fans speculated why WWE wasn't pulling the trigger. Theories swirled. Maybe there were contract hurdles. Maybe there were behind-the-scenes hesitations. Maybe the timing wasn't right. But now we know the truth: WWE was waiting. And Jacob Fatu was watching. Watching his cousins build the bloodline. Watching Roman cement his legacy. Watching Solo stand in his place. And maybe, just maybe, he decided he was done watching. Because his entrance into WWE wasn't a debut. It was a declaration. The look on Solo Sikoa's face in that backstage segment said it all. It wasn't shock. It wasn't pain. It was confusion. For all the enemies Solo had faced in the ring, for all the people he'd attacked under Roman's command, this was different. This was family. And this was personal. That's why it hurt more. That's why it meant more. This betrayal didn't just fracture the bloodline storyline, it introduced a new kind of emotional weight to Raw. Up until now, the Bloodline saga had played out mostly on SmackDown. Raw had its own players, its own arcs. But with Fatu's attack on Solo, the narrative migrated. The Civil War came to Monday nights. And it came violently. The creative decision to have the attack happen backstage rather than in-ring was also deliberate. WWE wanted to signal that this wasn't about performance. It wasn't a wrestling angle. It was real, at least in kayfabe. It was unfiltered rage. No music. No lights. Just betrayal. Fatu, standing over Solo's unconscious body, didn't say much. But what he did say cut deep. No more lies. Those 3 words might be the core of the next 6 months of WWE programming. Because what are the Bloodline if not built on lies? The lie that Roman was untouchable. The lie that family came first. The lie that loyalty was eternal. Fatu exposed the cracks. He reminded everyone that family doesn't mean submission. That blood doesn't mean obedience. That just because you share a name doesn't mean you share a throne. And that's what WWE is building toward now. Not just a feud. A full-blown civil war. Fatu's betrayal is the kind that doesn't get patched up with a handshake. This isn't a miscommunication. It's not a jealousy angle. It's war. And like all great wrestling wars, it's going to spill into the ring, into interviews, into contract signings, and maybe even into Survivor Series or WrestleMania. Because Solo won't forget. He's a Sikoa. He doesn't forgive. He punishes. But Fatu knows that. And that's what makes him dangerous. He didn't just turn his back, he welcomed the consequences. And that's why aligning with Seth Rollins makes sense. Rollins has always thrived on betrayal. He betrayed the Shield. He manipulated Murphy. He led AOP into battle and let them take the heat. He knows what betrayal means. And now, he's watching someone else do it better than he ever did. Jacob Fatu didn't turn on a faction. He turned on an empire. And in doing so, he became something more than a newcomer. He became the most dangerous man on Raw. For some fans, the name Jacob Fatu was a shock. For others, it was a long-awaited arrival. But no matter where you stood when he walked into WWE, one thing became clear the moment he dropped Solo Sikoa backstage: Jacob Fatu is not here to play side character. He's not here to be someone's muscle. He's not a cameo, not a third-tier cousin, not an afterthought. He's a force. A walking riot. A Samoan nightmare. And now that he's finally in WWE, fans are asking the question, who is this man who just blew up the Bloodline from the inside? Let's start at the beginning. Jacob Fatu was born into wrestling royalty. His father is Sam Fatu, better known as the Tonga Kid, who wrestled during the 1980s and 1990s. That makes Jacob part of the iconic Anoa'i family, the same lineage that produced The Rock, Roman Reigns, Yokozuna, Rikishi, the Usos, and Solo Sikoa. Wrestling isn't just in Jacob's blood. It's in his DNA, his upbringing, his environment. But unlike some of his cousins who went straight into WWE's development system, Jacob took the long road. He didn't inherit a contract. He earned his reputation the hard way, on the independent circuit, far from WWE cameras, in front of smaller crowds, with no safety net. And that's what makes him different. Jacob didn't debut in a performance center promo package. He debuted in war zones, MLW rings, indie events, and barbed wire brawls. His career took off in 2019 when he signed with Major League Wrestling, MLW, and within months, he was crowned MLW World Heavyweight Champion. From there, he went on a reign of destruction that turned heads across the wrestling world. He held that title for over 800 days. That's not a typo. For more than 2 years, Jacob Fatu was undefeated, dominant, and undisputed. He didn't just win matches. He demolished people. His moveset combined the explosiveness of a cruiserweight with the raw power of a heavyweight. Moonsaults, super kicks, suplexes, corner splashes, he was a hybrid athlete, impossible to prepare for, harder to stop. Fans who followed MLW knew what WWE was missing. He wasn't a loudmouth, though he could talk when needed. He wasn't a showboater. He was chaos wrapped in intensity. The kind of wrestler who made every second feel like a car crash waiting to happen. When he entered an arena, the mood shifted. You didn't just watch a Jacob Fatu match, you braced for it. He became the face of Contra Unit, a villainous stable in MLW, and carried himself like a king with a grudge. His character wasn't complicated. It didn't need to be. He was war. That was enough. And still, for years, WWE didn't call. Some speculated it was due to his past. Jacob has been open about making mistakes earlier in life. He served time. He's been through setbacks. But instead of hiding that, he's used it to build his identity. He's one of the few wrestlers who walks into the ring with scars on his resume and turns them into weapons. In an industry full of personas and gimmicks, Jacob Fatu is real. That authenticity made him a cult favorite. Hardcore fans loved him. Wrestlers respected him. And yet, for a long time, WWE seemed unsure how to use him. Maybe the timing wasn't right. Maybe they thought the Bloodline story didn't need more players. Maybe they were wrong. Now, he's finally arrived, not as an extra, but as a disruptor. And that's what makes his presence so terrifying. Jacob Fatu isn't built for tag team comedy. He's not a mid-card title guy. He's main event material, plain and simple. He moves like Bam Bam Bigelow. He hits like Taz. He carries the fury of Umaga with the ruthless mindset of a younger Samoa Joe. And now that he's been paired with Seth Rollins? That's not a tag team. That's a calculated collision. Fatu doesn't need a mouthpiece. But aligning with Rollins gives him space to speak less and hit more. It protects his mystique. It allows him to be the enforcer without being the loudest voice. He can stand in the shadows, wreak havoc when needed, and let Rollins pull the strings. It's a relationship that mirrors great WWE dynamics of the past, Batista with Triple H, Kane with The Undertaker, Diesel with Shawn Michaels. And now, Fatu with Rollins. But make no mistake, this pairing isn't long-term. If WWE knows what it's doing, this partnership has an expiration date. Fatu will eventually outgrow Rollins. He's not meant to be second in command. He's meant to be a threat to the entire hierarchy, including the man who brought him in. That's the arc fans are already predicting. Fatu joins Rollins, builds his name, gets the wins, earns the title shot, and then turns on the visionary. But before that happens, WWE is giving him room to show what he can do. And if his MLW footage is anything to go by, fans are about to see something special. His signature moves alone are a reason to watch. His pop-up Samoan drop is devastating. His corner cannonball leaves opponents breathless. And his finishing move, a top rope moonsault that seems impossible for a man his size, is jaw-dropping every time. This is a man who can brawl, fly, and grapple. He can wrestle technical if needed, or just beat you with fists. He's versatile, unpredictable, and unapologetic. And that makes him the perfect wild card in WWE's shifting landscape. He's also walking into WWE at the perfect moment. The Bloodline is in shambles. Roman Reigns is on sabbatical. Jimmy Uso has disappeared. Jay is riding solo. Solo Sikoa, once viewed as the heir to Roman's throne, now looks vulnerable. And Jacob Fatu just kicked the door down and stole the spotlight. He's not asking for a seat at the table. He's setting the table on fire. From a storytelling perspective, he's the ultimate catalyst. He has the family name but rejects the family politics. He has the history but denies the tradition. He's the anomaly. And that makes him dangerous. He's also a storyteller in his own way. Watch his body language. Watch how he sells every move like he's telling a war story. Watch how he paces the ring, how he scans his opponents, how he takes his time. He's not fast-paced for the sake of speed. Every movement has weight. That's ring psychology. That's experience. And WWE knows it. They're not just giving him squash matches or backstage vignettes. They debuted him with a bang. They let him destroy a major name. And they're setting him up to be a central figure in what could become the biggest faction war since the Shield versus The Authority. Jacob Fatu is no longer indie royalty. He's the most dangerous man in WWE, and he hasn't even had his first match yet. This is just the beginning. Wrestling is built on choices. Who you fight. Who you trust. Who you stand beside when everything goes to hell. And when Jacob Fatu stepped into WWE and chose to side with Seth Rollins instead of his own flesh and blood, he made a choice that sent shockwaves through the entire industry. It wasn't just surprising. It was blasphemous to some. This was a man with the Anoa'i name, part of the same lineage that built the Bloodline empire brick by brick. He could have walked in, acknowledged Roman Reigns, and been welcomed with open arms. He could have joined Solo Sikoa and carried the Bloodline into its next chapter. But he didn't. He chose war. He chose Seth Rollins. The question is, why? To answer that, we have to look deeper than just storylines and character dynamics. We have to look at legacy, pride, rejection, and power. Because this wasn't just a heel turn. It was a calculated rejection of everything the Bloodline stands for, and a declaration that Jacob Fatu is not here to be anybody's understudy. Let's break it down. First, there's the legacy factor. For years, WWE has been building the Bloodline into the most dominant faction in modern wrestling history. Roman Reigns at the top. The Usos holding tag team gold. Solo Sikoa stepping into the role of silent destroyer. Paul Heyman whispering in the background. It was perfect for a while, too perfect. But for someone like Jacob Fatu, watching from the outside, it may have looked like a locked room. The family was winning. The empire was thriving. But there was no door open for him. No invitation. No handshake. No acknowledgement. That eats at a person. Especially someone with Fatu's background. He wasn't just watching cousins get pushed. He was breaking his body in smaller promotions, building a name on his own, and constantly hearing fans ask, why isn't Jacob Fatu in WWE? He had the pedigree. He had the resume. And yet, year after year, his phone didn't ring. Meanwhile, the Bloodline continued to grow, without him. That creates resentment. Not envy. Not jealousy. Resentment. There's a difference. Envy wants what someone else has. Resentment says, I deserve it more. Fatu probably looked at Solo Sikoa and saw a mirror. Similar style. Similar role. Similar fire. But Solo was on national television, getting the rub from Roman, getting spotlighted by Heyman, getting the security of a machine that backed him no matter what. And Fatu? He had to claw for everything. So when the call finally came from WWE, it wasn't about joining the Bloodline. It was about riding over it. He didn't want to be the fourth Samoan in a black shirt throwing up the one. He didn't want to stand next to Roman. He wanted to stand opposite him. And the quickest way to do that was to align with someone who already had Roman's number. Seth Rollins. Rollins has always been positioned as the anti-Roman. The man who never needed family. The man who cashed in at WrestleMania to steal Roman's moment. The man who beat Roman when no one else could. He's been a thorn in Roman's side for a decade. If Fatu wanted to burn the Bloodline to the ground, Rollins was the match. But there's more to it than just legacy. There's opportunity. In WWE, factions can be golden tickets or golden cages. The Bloodline was a golden ticket for the Usos. For Solo, it became a golden cage. He never got to speak. Never got to stand on his own. He was Roman's cleanup crew. Fatu knew this. He saw what happened to Solo. He knew that if he walked into the Bloodline, he wouldn't be Jacob Fatu, the Samoan werewolf. He'd be Jacob Fatu, the silent enforcer. The muscle. The spare. He didn't come to WWE to be part of someone else's story. He came to write his own. And Rollins offered that. Rollins didn't need another Echo. He needed an equal. Someone who could wreak havoc, carry weight, and reshape Raw in his own image. Rollins respects chaos. He thrives in it. He doesn't demand blind loyalty like Roman. He doesn't hide behind tradition. He encourages evolution. That's what Fatu needed. A partner. Not a master. And when he looked around the locker room, there were two clear paths. 1. Walk into the Bloodline, follow orders, live in Roman's shadow, and wait for a chance that might never come. Or 2. Align with Rollins, make an immediate impact, carve his own kingdom out of Raw, and bring the fight to the ones who left him behind. He made the only choice that made sense. There's also the personal angle. While we don't know all the behind-the-scenes dynamics, we can assume Fatu didn't appreciate being ignored by the family for so long. While Roman, Jimmy, Jay, and Solo got network deals, premium pay-per-view spots, and WrestleMania headliners, Fatu was grinding in front of 200 fans with no air conditioning and no guarantees. It's not about bitterness. It's about worth. Fatu knew what he could offer. He knew he could be a main event monster. He knew he could draw money. He knew fans would rally behind him, or fear him, if given the platform. But that platform wasn't going to be handed to him by Roman. So he took it by force. That's why the betrayal of Solo Sikoa was so brutal. It wasn't just strategy. It was personal. It was a message, you were the chosen one. And now you're the warning. That kind of betrayal isn't just an angle. It's a rebrand. Fatu didn't turn heel. He didn't turn face. He turned free. He made the one choice that guarantees he doesn't get lost in the shuffle. Because now, no matter what happens next, the spotlight is on him. Rollins may have initiated the partnership, but Fatu is the one holding the detonator. And this brings us to the bigger picture. Rollins has always needed someone unpredictable in his circle. In the past, his factions fell apart because his teammates either couldn't carry the weight or refused to play second fiddle. With Fatu, he may have finally found someone who's not interested in being either. They're not partners out of loyalty. They're partners out of mutual gain. And those partnerships are always the most dangerous, because they end the ugliest. But for now, they work. Rollins gives Fatu a target. Fatu gives Rollins a hammer. Together, they give WWE a storyline that matters. It's not just Bloodline versus Rollins. It's legacy versus earned power. Tradition versus reinvention. Roman's past versus WWE's future. And when you frame it like that, Fatu's choice becomes obvious. He didn't choose Rollins over Bloodline. He chose himself over everything. Seth Rollins knows how to survive. That's been his story since day one. In a business that chews up talent and spits out what's left, Rollins has evolved, adapted, and outplayed nearly everyone who's shared a ring with him. But now, as he welcomes Jacob Fatu into his fold and repositions himself as a faction leader once again, one question looms. Is Seth Rollins building something bigger, or is he just using Fatu as a pawn in another long game? To answer that, we have to look at the blueprint of Rollins' career. And if history tells us anything, it's this: Rollins doesn't build alliances to share power. He builds alliances to control it. Start at the beginning. Rollins broke into WWE's consciousness as the architect of the Shield. He was the brains behind the brawn. Roman Reigns was the power, Dean Ambrose was the chaos, but Rollins was the planner. He orchestrated their attacks. He picked their targets. And when the time came to choose between friendship and power, he didn't hesitate. He drove a steel chair into Ambrose's back, betrayed Reigns, and sold out to the Authority. Why? Because the next step up the ladder meant walking on the backs of the people who helped him climb. Fast forward to the Monday Night Messiah era. Rollins took on a darker, more manipulative persona. He didn't call himself a leader. He called himself a savior. He didn't recruit, he converted. AOP followed. Buddy Murphy followed. But none lasted. Rollins didn't elevate them. He used them until they were expendable. And now? He's doing it again. But this time, the stakes are higher, and the timing is smarter. With Roman Reigns off-screen and the bloodline unraveling, Rollins has become the de facto face of Raw. But faces don't stay on top without protection. WWE is moving into a phase where factions dominate storylines again, not just one-man shows. And Rollins, always 5 moves ahead, saw that before anyone else. Bringing in Jacob Fatu isn't just about backup. It's about sending a message. Rollins isn't just trying to defend his title, he's trying to take Roman's throne while Roman isn't looking. And he knows that to do that, he needs more than great matches. He needs fear. He needs spectacle. He needs chaos. So he looked for the perfect storm. And he found it in Jacob Fatu. But is this alliance genuine? The case for Rollins as a mastermind begins with timing. Rollins made the pitch to Fatu right before War Games season, when WWE stakes are at their peak and the narrative terrain is wide open. He didn't approach Fatu after WrestleMania. He didn't wait for a lull. He struck when a power vacuum existed. Roman was gone. Cody was distracted. Judgment Day was fractured. And Rollins saw the opportunity to act. That's classic chess. He's not building a team, he's assembling an empire. Fatu is his first move. Ethan Page or Ricky Sentz could be next. And the goal isn't just winning matches. The goal is reshaping the narrative power structure of WWE. If Reigns built the bloodline around family loyalty, Rollins is building his around strategic dominance. Not cousins. Not kinship. Pure force. But there's another way to see this. What if Rollins isn't orchestrating? What if he's adapting? Because here's the truth, Seth Rollins, for all his accolades and brilliance, has never quite escaped Roman's shadow. The Shield may have launched him, but it also cast him behind Reigns for a decade. Rollins was always the workhorse. The match of the night guy. The title defender. Roman? He got the top spot. The merchandise machine. The legendary run. The God-tier presentation. Maybe Rollins is tired of being second. And maybe Jacob Fatu is his shortcut to changing that. There's a world where this isn't some genius plan. There's a world where Rollins is just making the smartest move available. Not because he's a mastermind. Because he's desperate. Look at the pressure he's under. He's the world heavyweight champion, but he's not the top champion. That title still belongs to Roman. The entire reason the second world title was created was to give Raw something to hold on to while Reigns camped out on SmackDown. Rollins has made that title feel important, but he knows it's not the belt. He knows it's not the one that headlined 3 straight WrestleManias. So maybe he's doing what he has to do. Maybe he sees Fatu not as a long-term ally, but as a weapon. Someone to throw at the bloodline, at Judgment Day, at Cody Rhodes, whatever threat needs breaking next. That's not evil. That's survival. Because in WWE, it's never just about who's the best wrestler. It's about who adapts fastest. And Rollins? He's the most adaptable man on the roster. He's not stuck in one character. He's evolved from the architect to the Kingslayer to the Messiah to the visionary. No one else has rebranded more successfully, more often. He understands that staying still means fading out. So when the bloodline started falling apart, Rollins didn't celebrate. He recalculated. He saw a chance to take the concept, the faction, the dominance, the drama, and rewrite it in his image. Not with cousins. Not with blood. But with firepower. Jacob Fatu is the prototype of what Rollins wants around him. Unhinged. Unpredictable. Unquestioned. Fatu doesn't need to be taught how to fight. He doesn't need a manager. He doesn't need grooming. He's ready-made destruction. And Rollins knows how to weaponize that. But if you listen closely to his recent promos, there's a slight change in tone. Less flair. Less screaming. More precision. Like he knows the stakes are shifting. He isn't dancing to his entrance like it's all a game anymore. He's walking to the ring like there's something coming. Something heavy. And maybe that's the pressure of what he's building. Because when you take on someone like Jacob Fatu, you don't get to control everything. You may think you do, but Fatu is a grenade. You can only hold on to him for so long before he explodes. And if Rollins thinks he can handle that forever, he may be underestimating what he's ignited. This brings us back to the core question. Is Seth Rollins a mastermind? Or is he an opportunist? The answer might be both. He's smart enough to see the cracks in WWE's system. Smart enough to identify who can help him exploit them. Smart enough to build something that looks unstoppable. But he's also someone who has a pattern. He builds factions. He leads until it no longer benefits him. Then he jumps ship or sets the thing on fire himself. And maybe this time, he's about to repeat the cycle. Jacob Fatu may be with Rollins today. But tomorrow? That's a different story. Rollins has never ended a partnership clean. Dean Ambrose? Burned. Murphy? Dumped. AOP? Forgotten. Fatu could be next. Or maybe Fatu sees it coming. Maybe he's the one using Rollins. Maybe the whole alliance is built on mutual manipulation, and War Games will be the explosion point. Either way, someone's going to pay. Because when you put two manipulators in the same faction, it's not a matter of if they betray each other. It's a matter of when.